I return to a conversation with the philosopher Mr. Krishnamurti.
To lay the right foundation so that we become a light to ourselves, we must understand fear. What is fear? Not how to overcome fear. What is fear? I do not know if you've noticed that anything that has to be overcome must be overcome again and again. If you've ever conquered anything, it doesn't matter what it is, some outward or inward enemy, you have to reconquer it again and again. We are not trying to overcome fear. We're trying to suppress it, or give it a different quality. But instead we're trying to understand it. Trying to find out what fear actually is, and how it comes into being. So what is this fear? The fear of what has been, the fear of yesterday, the fear of tomorrow, the fear of not being and not becoming. That is fear in time. If you are faced with a challenge, an enormous crisis in your life, there's no time. And there is no yesterday, no tomorrow. You act instantly, don't you? It is the thinking about what happened yesterday or what will happen tomorrow that breeds fear. But when your action is immediate, you cannot think about what is happening now, at this instant. Thought cannot enter into the active present. It is only when the action is over and done with that you can think about what might have been, or the past, or the future. So thought is the cause of fear. Thinking of the past and the future, thinking about yesterday and tomorrow. I had pain yesterday, and tomorrow perhaps it will return. Or tomorrow may lose my job, so I'm afraid. Please, observe your own mind and heart. Go into yourself, and you will see how extraordinarily simple it becomes. If you don't go into it, then it's very complex. Then what you do has no meaning whatsoever. Therefore, thought breeds the fear. The fear that perhaps I'm no good, and I may not succeed. The thought of being unloved in my utter loneliness. The thought of being found out in some shameful act I've committed. The thought of losing something which is very precious and dear to me. So in its wake, thought brings regret and despair. As well as being the source of fear, thought is also the source of pleasure. The thought of something which has given you enjoyment nourishes that pleasure, gives substance to it. When you see the sunset of an evening, or the early morning light on the hills, and you take in all of its beauty and loveliness, when this happens, at the actual moment of perception, there is no thought. Only a total awareness of everything around you. And when you start to think about it, go back to it in thought, and say to yourself, I must have more of this pleasure. Recapture the beauty of it. Then thinking the thought about it gives further enjoyment. So thought breeds pleasure as well as fear. This is an obvious psychological fact, which intellectually we accept, but that acceptance has no value, because pleasure contains within it the seed of fear. So pleasure is fear. Please, watch this carefully. We're not saying you must deny yourself pleasure. All the religions throughout the world have condemned pleasure, sexual or otherwise. We're not saying that. A religious man does not deny or suppress, but rather, he is learning, observing. So thinking about what has happened or what might happen brings fear. And as with the fear of death, for instance, postponed or put away into the distant future, it is still there. And thinking about some shortcoming one's past, which others might use to their advantage, or thinking about the pleasure of sex and keeping the image alive, this thinking about something does breed either fear or pleasure. The question that arises, is it possible to to live our everyday life without the interference of thought? It's not such a crazy question as it sounds. And it is a very important question. Because man, throughout the ages, has worshipped thought and the intellect in all the clever books with their theories, in all the theological works with their concepts about God, showing us the way to live. These experts and specialists are like people who are tethered to a post. They are restricted from going any further because of their conditioning. So whatever they think, they are limited. And because they are the result of 10,000 years of propaganda, their gods, their dogmas, their rituals have no meaning whatsoever. Man has worshipped them, put it on a pedestal, thought. Look at all the books I've read. Now what is thought? What significance has it? I know there are people who have said, kill the mind. You can't kill it. You can't just drop thought as though it was some garment you're wearing. You have to understand this extraordinary process of thinking, your own thinking, not by studying books or being lectured to about thought. Sorry! When you think about it, what is the origin of thinking? When is thought necessary, when it's not? When is it an impediment, and when is it help? So you must find out all these things for yourself, not be guided by the speaker, by some authority. You know, the world is becoming more and more authoritarian. Not only religiously and politically, but psychologically. There must, of course, be a certain kind of authority in technological knowledge, but to wield authority in religious and psychological matters is an abomination. Then man is never free, and never can be free. And freedom is an absolute necessity. Woo! How can a mind that is afraid ever be free? How can a mind that is clouded by perpetual thinking and incessant chattering ever be free to look, to acquire, to live, and to know that ecstasy which is not of pleasure? So what is thought? And can thought come to an end at a certain level, and yet function at other levels rationally, sanely, objectively, emotionally, and impersonally? That is, knowledge about the universe, about everything, is necessary. Knowledge. But one also, and you reply immediately. If the question is a little more complex, then you take some time before answering. During the interval between the question and the answer, memory is in operation. And from the memory you reply. So thinking is the response of memory. And memory is the storehouse of thousands of experiences. Conscious and unconscious. That is, the unconscious is the vast storehouse of memory of the race, of the tradition, Christian, Hindu, Buddhist, and therein is hidden the accumulation of many centuries, and the conscious mind is the storehouse of knowledge, the shit you've acquired through the whole structure of memory. You are conditioned, and from that conditioning you respond. Your condition is a Republican, a Democrat, a communist. Then from that background, from that memory, you respond. If you're brought up as a Christian, you've been indoctrinated by the propaganda of the church with its dogmas and rituals, then you respond according to that memory, that conditioning. Or if you're in Hindu, you respond to the background of your gods and your puja, the rites of the temple, and so on. Please follow this. It may appear to be complicated, but it is only verbally complex. So thought is the response of the brain cells, which have accumulated knowledge and experience. And since thought breeds fear, thought, has divided itself and separated the thinker from the thought. Let's look at that. The thinker says, I'm afraid. The thinker, the I, the me, is separate from the thing of which he is afraid. The fear itself. So there's duality and division. The thinker and the thought. The observer and the observer. The experiencer and the experience. This duality, this division, this separation is the cause of effort, the source from which all effort springs, apart from obvious duality.
man and woman, black and white. There is an inward psychological duality as the observer and the observed. The one who experiences and the thing experienced. In this division, in which time and space are involved, is the whole process of conflict. You can observe it yourself. You are violent. That is a fact. And you also have the ideological concept of nonviolence. So there is duality. Now the observer says, I must not be violent. And the attempt to become nonviolent is conflict, which is a waste of energy.
Whereas, if the observer is totally aware of that violence, then he is able to deal with it immediately, and he is free. One must observe this dualistic process at work within oneself, this division of the I and the not I, the observer and the observed. The thought has brought about this division. It is thought which says, I'm dissatisfied with what is, and I shall only be satisfied with what should be. It is thought which has enjoyed some experience as pleasure and says, I must have more of it. So, in each one of us there is this dualistic, contradictory process, and this process is a waste of energy. Therefore one asks oneself, and I hope you are asking, why is there this division? Why is there this constant effort between what is and what should be? And is it possible to eradicate totally the what should be, the ideal, which is the future, as well as what has been, the past, from which the future is built? Is there an observer at all? Except this thought dividing itself into the observer and the observer. You could either look at this and discard it, or look at it and go into it very deeply. Because as long as there is an observer, there must be division, hence conflict, hence war. And the observer is always the past, never new. The thing observed may be new, but the observer always translates it in terms of the old, the past, so thought can never be new, and therefore never free. Thought is always the old. So when you worship thought, you are worshiping something that is dead. And we, who are supposed to be great thinkers, actually live in the past, and therefore are dead human beings. Thought has created pleasure and also fear, which breeds violence. So the problem is, there is fear, and there is violence. And by considering them merely in terms of words or by description, this does not bring an end to them. I see very clearly how thought has brought this fear. I am afraid I may lose something which is very precious to me. That it is the thought which has produced this fear. If thought suppresses itself, says I won't think about it, the fear is still there. Please follow this slowly. If I attempt to escape from it, accept or deny it, I'm still afraid. It is still there. So what is the next question? There is fear, and thought cannot be suppressed. That would be an extreme form of neuroses. What takes place when the observer is the observed? You understand the question? The observer is the result of the past, the thought, the thing observed, which is fear. It is also the result of thought. So the observer and the observed are both the product of thought. Now, whatever thought does with regard to the state of fear is to continue fear in a different form. So thought, observing this whole process, learning intimately about itself, not being told by another, seeing for itself the nature and the structure of fear, which is itself. Thought then realizes that whatever it does with regard to fear is still to give nourishment to fear. So then what happens? What comes out of this understanding? I hope you're following all this. I'm almost done. I have observed fear, which is thought, as I have observed pleasure. Now the observer is the observed. Although thought has separated the observer and the thing observed, I see that very clearly. There is an understanding of it. Not as an intellectual concept, but as an actual reality. in my bones.
So what takes place? The understanding is not. The understanding is
not intellectual, therefore is the highest form of intelligence.
And to be intelligent in this way means to be highly sensitive, aware of the nature, the whole structure of fear.
If I suppress fear, run away from it, then there is no sensitive perception of fear and all its implications. Therefore, I must learn about fear and not run away from it. And I can only learn about something when I am in direct contact with it. And I can only be in contact with it
So much
when I can look freely. This freedom is the highest form of sensitivity. Not only physically, but in the mind also. The brain itself becomes highly sensitive. This understanding is intelligence, and it is this intelligence which is going to operate. And as long as there is this intelligence, there is no fear.